Welcome to the Rise of the Trades podcast, the show dedicated to helping you to build, grow, and scale your trades or construction business. All rise for your host, Craig Wilkinson.
Welcome to this week's coaching episode of the Rise of the Trades podcast, where we help trades and construction business owners to skyrocket leads, explode net profits without having to graft 60 hours a week and becoming that busy fool. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you the significant importance of you becoming a salesperson in your business and not a tradesperson. And I'm going to be sharing with you 7 simple sales tips that you can implement into your business to win more work and more jobs and to help you grow your trades business. But before we go there, I'd just like to announce that the tickets for our up and coming Rise of the Trades Summit have now been released, and you can grab your ticket by clicking on the link in the show notes and the description of this episode. If you love what you're listening to on this free podcast, then come and spend a full day in person with me at a unique hybrid event where all of our listeners, Growth Club and Inner Circle members congregate at this event. They travel from all over the UK to attend. We're going to have a big networking session with past £120 million worth of business. I'm going to be doing a coaching session on stage, and we're going to get you pumped up, fired up and motivated. So grab your ticket now. Now, let's transition over to this week's coaching episode. I want to start off by giving a shout out to Jared Van Agus. He's a heating engineer in Bridgend in South Wales, and he's one of our very proactive Growth Club members. And a couple of weeks ago, he posted into our community saying, Craig, I'm struggling with, sales. I could do with a bit of sort of like sales training. I know you do that. So can you give us some tips on what to do when it comes to sales? So I decided, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to record a podcast, and not only does Jared get the knowledge, but everybody else can get this knowledge for free. Now listen, whether you like the word salesman, salesperson, saleswoman, or sales in general, whether you like the word or not, there's one thing and one person that you must become in your business if you are going to generate more leads, more sales, and more jobs. And that is, you've got to become a salesperson. And when I'm delivering the sales training month on my Inner Circle, one of the first questions I ask our members at the beginning of the sales training is this: give me one word that describes the word sales. And I ask them to write that word down and then share it. And for many, many people, they come up with words like pushy, sleazy, pressure, uncomfortable. And I get it, because over the years, sales has made me feel those words, in the fact that at some point in the past, I've been sold to by people, which has made me feel like I've been put under pressure. It's made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't like that pressurized environment. I don't want to be pushy and sleazy. So therefore, over the years of me running my businesses, I always took to the fact that I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be a pushy, sleazy type of person that's trying to force people into buying from me. I just wanted to be myself, go in, do what I do, speak to my customers, and if they like me and they like the price, then they'll get the job. There were no way I was going to start ask for the work and start begging for the work and pressurizing people into using me and all them sleazy sales tactics. I just thought, go in, do your stuff, give them a price. If they like it, they'll go here. If they don't, they don't. And I did okay. I had a decent conversion rate back then. and I won my fair share of work, and I was happy, I was winning work. Until about 18 years ago, I went to a networking event. And at this networking event, I was given a book by a sales trainer called Brian Tracy. And I want you to write this book down, right? And this book was called The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. And on the front cover of the book, honestly, it's like typical 1970s, 80s salesperson, like a shirt with braces, like slick back combed hair to one side. And he just looked like your typical, stereotypical, sleazy salesperson. But I was given this book and I just started flicking through it and I started reading it and I started pulling out some really good pointers out of this book, things that I wasn't doing in my business. And then all of a sudden I thought, hang on a minute. What he's saying in this book is true. And what he was saying is this. What is the point, in your case, running a trades and construction business, right? What is the point of you running a business, spending all that time, effort and money on marketing, like websites, social media and everything else that you're doing, right, to generate leads, to then have the systems in place to cope with the leads coming in and all the time and effort invested into those systems, to then start to employ a team that's going to help you grow your business. What's the point of doing all that investment of time, effort and money if you are going to go and cock it up by what you're either not saying and doing or saying and doing at the wrong time when it comes to the sales process? I'm sat there thinking, do you know what? He's got a point. We spend all this time, effort and money on building this business. And the final hurdle, the last part of the entire part for you to win that job is the sales process. I mean, come on. You get the lead, you book the appointment in, you go out, home or site visit. You do the survey, you do your patter while you're there, talking to that customer with your crappy sales patter that you're going to be coming out with. You come back, you put a quote together, you send the quote out, and then what? You get ghosted. You don't follow it up and you hear nothing from that customer. I mean, what an absolute shed load of time you've just wasted, your valuable time. And the reason being is you're crap at sales. You haven't got a sales process. You've had no sales training. So what you're doing is you're falling at the final hurdle, but arguably the most important hurdle to overcome, because you've just invested a boatload of time, effort and money to get to that hurdle, but then you go and cock it up by what you're saying or not saying and doing at the right time and losing the sale, losing the job to somebody else. So in the book, Brian Tracy's challenging you to say, what sales training have you had? What techniques do you say? What do you do? How do you behave and how do you approach that sales process? What's the strategy that you've got? Because if you're just going out and winging it and thinking you're a cheapy chappy and you've got the gift of the gab, and if I get in front of a customer, 9 times out of 10, they'll go with me because I can get on with customers. If that's your sales strategy, then the law of averages says if you look at 10 jobs and quote 10, you're bound to win some. But we want to get that conversion rate up. And what I'm here to say is, when customers turn round to you and say, I'm not going with you, I'm going with someone else because your price was too high, I've got a cheaper quote. 9 times out of 10, it's never about price. It's you've actually cocked up your whole sales process by doing and saying something at the wrong time that's pissed that customer off. But you don't know this and you can't see this because you're not aware that you should have a sales strategy in place. So 9 times out of 10, it's never about price. You've just gone and cocked it up yourself at some point. And if we're going to grow this business, surely it makes sense for you to have some sales training at that final hurdle so you don't go and scupper your own success. Because I'm telling you now, if you've never had sales training, you are putting obstacles and hurdles and building walls in front of yourself and making it difficult for your potential customers to get over it, all because you don't know what to say and do at the right times. And all this leads to you wasting hours and hours and hours of time quoting jobs and spending time with customers, pricing jobs, sending everything in. You're wasting all that time because you've not got a sales process in place. And then that becomes frustrating because you've got leads coming in, you're looking at all these jobs, but you're not winning them. And then all of a sudden, your diary's looking a bit scarce and a bit bare, and you're thinking it's down to price. It's not price, it's you. So, having read this book, The Psychology of Selling, the sales process, back then, right, we didn't have apps, we didn't have podcasts like this. I bought some CDs, right, of Brian Tracy. I bought these CDs off his website that got shipped in from America that took about 3 weeks to come. And it were a pack of CDs, and there were 5 CDs in this pack. So what I started doing about 18 years ago, I started listening to these CDs while I was driving round in my van from job to job or whatever I was doing, and I was leveraging my time. And I started listening to these CDs, and everything that he was saying inside these CDs and the knowledge that he was sharing made total and utter sense to me once I'd heard it. But the thing is, with tradesmen and women in particular, all we're concerned about is being great on the tools and good at delivering the service that we offer. And therefore, we don't take any time, usually, to learn how to build, grow and scale a business. And we tend to stay away from the sales side of it because of the words that my inner circle members read out to me and tell me, which is pushy, sleazy, pressure. They don't feel confident doing it. They feel outside of their comfort zone. It all feels uncomfortable to them. So they tend to stay away from it. But when you think about it, it's so important that we learn some sales techniques. And I'm not on about pushy, sleazy. I'm not on about, taking Mrs. Jones, the old retired dear, down to cash machine and stood at side her while she takes a deposit out at cash machine and all. I'm not on about any of that. I'm on about just changing subtly some of the things that you say and do, and doing them at the right time that will 100% help you increase your conversion rate and win more work. So in the remainder of this episode, I'm going to be walking you through 7 different chapters. And in each chapter, I'm going to be sharing 7 different tips that's going to help you to convert more of those leads and win more of the jobs that you're quoting. So grab your notepads, your pens, your tablets, and start making notes, and let's get stuck in. Now, going back to the question that I asked my inner circle members, describe sales in one word. I then say to them and share with them the one word that I would describe sales as is relationships. And the more positive relationships that we can build with potential customers, ultimately we're going to win more jobs. So your role, your job as a salesperson in your business is to build as many relationships as we can. And to build relationships, there are 4 ingredients that we need to factor in. And if you listen to any of my coaching, in particular, let's say a lot of the marketing podcast episodes I've done, you'll know that I talk about the following 4 words. Write these down. Because it's these 4 words that help build relationships with future and potential customers and clients. Word number 1 is the word know. K-N-O-W. In other words, to build relationships, we've got to get more people to know that we exist. Because right now, within a 5 square mile of where you're sat or listening to this episode now, there are people wanting your product or service. The challenge is they don't know you exist. So number 1, we've got to get people to know that we exist. Word number 2 is the word like. L-I-K-E. Write that down. And we've got to get these people to get to like us, right? Because to build a relationship and build rapport with someone, they've got to like us, aren't they? You're never going to sell to somebody that doesn't like you, or you don't like them. You're never going to buy off them, are you? Word number 3 is trust. If we're going to build a relationship and rapport, we've got to build masses of trust. Word number 4 is an emotional marketing and sales trigger that we call, write this word down, confidence. It's confidence. And think about it. If we can get our potential customers or clients to get to know us, to get to like us, to get to trust us, and we can install the emotional trigger of confidence that we can solve the problem that they've got, if we can build all that lot in, then we've got more chance of winning the job and the work than somebody else that misses maybe 1 or 2 of them 4 areas that we've got to target. So I teach relationship and rapport building. But to do that, we've got to get people to know us, like us, trust us, and have confidence that we can solve the problem that they've got. Now, I didn't know any of this back in 1994 when I first set up my business. So for them probably first 15 years, I would go to a potential customer's house to have a look at an extension or a loft conversion or a basement or a refurb, whatever it is back then that they wanted doing. And this is what I would do. This was my sales process back then, with no training and just winging it. So I'd rock up and I might be 5 minutes late, right? And it could have been traffic, right? And I knock on the door and then I put this ridiculous, fake, posh voice on. Come on, you do it yourself. When you go and speak to customers, all of a sudden you turn into somebody else, don't you? And you put this like fake persona on and this like smarter, more professional, posher voice, right? That's not you. And then what I'd do is I'd think, right, I'll take my shoes off, right? As soon as I walk in, that's a good sign. So I'd take my shoes off, and then somebody said to me, "Oh, Craig, do you want a drink while you're here?" And I used to think, oh, I've got to say yes, because if I say no to people, that's a negative word. So I'd say yes. And while they're putting kettle on, I'd be scanning room and I'd be looking for things that I could talk about to build this rapport. And I might see a football trophy on the side, or a photograph of the kids or something like that on a picture. And I think, oh, I've got something I can talk about to build rapport. And then I'd start saying, oh, so you got a couple of kids then? Oh, I've got kids. I see a football trophy on the side. My son and my daughter playing a football team. Oh, what football team does your son and daughter play for? And I'd be asking them all these random questions. And here's me thinking I'm building rapport. And then what I would do is I'd walk in and I'd do my normal spiel that you've got, because come on, you've got your own patter and your own spiel and your own thing that you take them through. And then what I would do is, let's say it's a loft conversion I've gone to look at. What I'd do is I'd go up in loft, I'd do a bit of measuring up, and then I'd come down and then I'd go like this. Blur! And I would just blur out absolutely everything that I could think of about a loft conversion to that customer. Because in my head, I'm thinking, if I'm more knowledgeable than everybody else that comes to measure up for that loft, if I can give them all the information on how a loft conversion is built, then they're going to favour me because I've got more knowledge than anybody else. So what I'd go into this tyrant of everything. I'd be talking about planning permission and how we apply for planning permission, building regulations and the fact that you've got to have 2 metres headroom on your staircase. Your spindles can't be more than 100 mil gap between each other in case a baby's egg gets stuck. We need mains powered smoke alarms on each level. We've got to change your doors to 30-minute fire doors and put intermittent strips around your doors. We've got to blah, 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 blah. And then an hour later, I'd come up for breath. And then I'd say, okay, so thanks ever so much. I'd walk out of that job thinking, I've got that. And come on, you do the same, don't you? Sometimes you just go to a job and you walk out and you're walking back to your van and you think, I've got that job. That went brilliant. And then I'd be walking back to back to van thinking, I've got it. But here's what's happening that you don't see. As the door closes, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you're walking off thinking you've got it. They close the door and go, thank fuck he's gone. Oh, for fuck's he never shut up. John, did you understand what he was talking about when on about all this headroom on an 8-kite winding flight of stairs? And oh my goodness, I'm glad he's gone. We're not using him. And I'd be driving away thinking, I've got that job, I'm going to make the quote, I'm going to spend all that time on quote, I'm going to get the price nice and tight for the price, I'm going to put the proposal together, I'm going to send it off, and then I'll get that job, and then I'd get ghosted. It'd be crickets. I'd not hear anything. I won't follow them up. There'd be no follow-up calls. And I'd be thinking, well, I've got enough work on anyway. I didn't need their job anyway. I'm not begging for work. If they don't want to use me, they don't want to use me. Next. And then I'd move on to the next job, repeat the exact same process, get ghosted again. Now I've quoted 4 jobs, and in the last couple of weeks, I've not won anything. And here's me thinking it's price. It was never about price. You've done something to piss that person off. That's why they're not going with you. So your job as a salesperson, because that's what you are probably responsible for bringing the work into your business. I can't see many people listening to this episode. I'm not saying there won't be. I'm saying there won't be many that have got surveyors or a sales team that go and do the surveys and the sales themselves. Most small to medium-sized businesses, it's the business owner that's doing the sales. So if you are not an expert on sales and you've had no sales training, you're probably making the same mistakes that I used to make. So once I'd listened to all these CDs, I found out that Brian Tracy were coming to London to do a live event. And I'm talking 18 years ago. So what did I do? I got myself a ticket. I went to London on my own, nobody else. I went on my own and I did a 2-day seminar, as they called them back then, with Brian Tracy. And then what happened is I came away from that seminar thinking, oh my God, I have got a massive unfair advantage on every single one of my competitors. Because my competitors are doing the exact same as what I were doing. But now I've listened to them CDs and now I've invested 2 days into this sales training with Brian Tracy, arguably at that time the #1 salesperson on the planet. I've got all these sales tactics and armour now in my armoury to unleash all this lot on my customers. So what I did is I set myself a goal of 3 months to implement all of these strategies. Now, admittedly, not every single one were relevant to my business at that time, as in a joinery, a trades business. But the ones that was relevant, I implemented them, and I kid you not, just by changing my approach to sales, my conversion rate went up by 67% within 3 months of that seminar, right? Massive. And all I did was change my approach. Still me, still Craig Wilkinson doing the sales, but I did things and said things at different times on that sales process, and I understood the psychology of sales, and it all started to work. And then I was hooked. I was hooked on sales. I saw it as a challenge. I didn't see it as sleazy or pushy. It's like a challenge then, isn't it? You know, I've got a product or service that solves my customers' pain. All I've got to do is influence them to choose me over somebody else. And it's not about price. It's about everything else around that sales process. So I took it as a challenge and I'm trying to outwit them. And because I took it as a challenge and I weren't pushy or sleazy with it, my conversion rates kept going up and up and up and up. And then all of a sudden we went from doing 2 loft conversions at a time to doing 7 loft conversions at a time and building my team and building and growing and scaling my business. And it all come down to sales. But then beyond that, because I got hooked that much onto it, I want to go and check something out. And this is not for today's episode. This will blow your mind. Honestly, this will blow your mind. Go and check out something. Just YouTube, neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming. Otherwise known as NLP. Just go and Google and YouTube NLP. And what I found is NLP, and listen, I might lose some area and I don't want to. NLP is like, I call it a mild form of hypnosis, right? And when I found out about NLP through the sales training that I've been doing, back in early 2013, I went on an NLP course with a guy called Scott White Training. And 6 months later, I became an NLP practitioner. And that was in 2013. And when I bolted that onto my sales, then everything just went to a whole new level. So I'm not here now, like preaching to you as just a joiner done good who's learnt a few tips. I'm an NLP practitioner. I practice and teach sales, right? So I know what I'm talking about. So these 7 steps and techniques that I'm going to take you through now, you must write these down and you must start implementing them into your business, because even if you just implement a couple of these 7, it's going to make a massive difference to the amount of jobs that you're winning. So the first thing I want you to understand is this. Your potential customers may have done loads of research on the product or service that they're buying from you. From me, it could have been loft conversions they've researched. It could be boilers. It could be a re-roof. It could be solar panels. It could be rendering. It could be whatever you offer. And you will get them customers that have gone into so much detail and research that they know as much about this as you. Then you've got other customers who's done a bit of research. You've got other customers who've done no research. So you've got absolutely no idea when you first meet that customer what knowledge they've got or what knowledge or information that you need to give them to start to build know, like, trust and confidence. And what I used to do is walk into that house and just go blur all this stuff out and not take a single second to ask the customer what information can I give them and what questions can I ask while I'm there. I never took the time to do that. So what I want you to think about as a salesperson is this. Every single potential customer that you go and see, I want you to think that they've got like tick boxes that they want ticking. And each one of them tick boxes is information that they are lacking that you have got to provide them with. And what your job as a salesperson is to make sure that throughout that sales process, in your marketing prior to getting the lead, in the conversations you're having on phone or email, or the in-person meetings or appointments that you have with your customers, it's your job to tick all of them tick boxes that specific customer needs ticking. Because if we can tick all them tick boxes and answer all the questions that's relevant to that particular customer, that equals the fourth emotional trigger, which is confidence. In other words, this person has answered all of the questions that I needed answering, and therefore I've built no like, trust and rapport with this person, and I've got confidence in they can do the job for me because you've ticked all the boxes that particular customer needed ticking. But if you go to the next customer and they've got, let's say, 8 boxes that they need ticking, but you only tick 3 of those 8 in that sales process, you've got 5 boxes left unticked. You're never going to win the job. Don't matter what the price goes in at, you're never going to win the job because they're not confident that you can solve the problem they've got because you've left some of them boxes unticked. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you get where I'm going with this? So when I'm doing sales, I need to extract the information from that potential customer. I need to extract information from them so I can give them the answers to tick all of those tick boxes that they need ticking. Now think about what I've just said. If someone's done loads and loads of research, they might only have 3 questions, 3 tick boxes that need ticking. If it's someone who's done a little bit of research, they might have got 6 tick boxes that need ticking. But if it's a customer who's not really done any research and they're right at the beginning of this sales process and this journey, they might have got 15 tick boxes that need ticking. Well, how are you supposed to know how many tick boxes they've got? And how are you supposed to know what information and what answers you've got to give them to tick the boxes if you're not asking the right questions? So when I went in and went blur and just blurted everything out, that customer might have been one of them that had done in-depth research and knew all that. So I'm just telling them what they already know. But the 2 questions, the 2 outstanding tick boxes that they were desperate for me to answer, I didn't answer them because I never found out what they were in the first place. You see, you get me? So you have got to start thinking every single customer that you speak to, every lead that comes in, how many tick boxes have they got that I've got to tick? And how can I get the information out of them to allow me to give them the answers to tick that box? So let me just give you a quick tip straight off the bat. The next time you go to see a customer, and this doesn't matter whether they're domestic or commercial, right? It matters not. When you meet them for the first time, the first words that come out of your mouth have got to be words or sentences or questions like this. Whilst I'm here, what information can I provide for you? What questions do you need answering? And what's important to you? Because if you ask them questions, they are then going to tell you what those tick boxes are. And it could be something as simple as, well, I want to know price. I want to know timescales. I'd like to know what your payment terms are. And I'd like to look at 3 jobs that you've done in the past. Right. If they're the 4 things that they say at that stage, whilst you're there, the first 4 things that you're going to do is answer those questions because that's what's important to them. Don't go off on a tangent talking about something that they're not interested in or is not relevant to them. because they've already got that research, or they might not be bothered about that. You've got to answer the questions that's important to them. And every single customer's going to have different questions they need answering. So ask that question as soon as you meet them. That's going to unlock everything. And then once you've answered those questions in that home or site survey, you say to them, what other questions have you got? What else can I help you with while I'm here? And because the conversation's starting to flow now and you're starting to build up know, like, trust and confidence, they then might go, oh, actually, now you said that, what about this? And then you answer that question. And then you keep doing it and you keep repeating, what other questions have you got? Until the point where they go, do you know what, Craig? I think you've answered all them questions. That's been great. And at that point, you know that you've ticked all them tick boxes. You've answered every single question that's relevant to that specific customer. So that's the first thing that you've got to start doing. And then stop talking. Zip it. Or otherwise, you're going to talk yourself out of the sale. Once you've answered those questions, you might be thinking deep down inside, well, I ain't told them about this, and I usually tell them about that. And for the last 5 years, I've told the customers this. No, shut up, zip it. It's not important to that particular customer. Do you get what I'm saying? Don't talk yourself out of the sale. Just answer the questions that's relevant to that particular customer, zip it, and once you've finished and they've said, no, that's it, you go. So that's your first action task. That's the first thing I want you to do every time you meet a new customer or client. Now let's get stuck into the 7 tips. Tip number 1, write down the 6-second judgment call. The 6-second judgment call. And what I mean by this is first impressions count. And within 6 seconds of a customer seeing you or meeting you or your team for the first time, they are going to make a judgment call based on what you are presenting in front of them. Now, what I mean by this is, and you do it yourself, when somebody walks up to you, whatever they're wearing, however they look, however they're walking, whatever they're saying, within 6 seconds, rightly or wrongly, you've made a judgment call on that person, and you do it yourself. So we've got to make sure that we do not lose the sale based on schoolboy or schoolgirl errors based on first impressions. And we spend hours and hours on Inner Circle going through this. And some of this is like, you're going to think, yeah, but Craig, some of this is basic, isn't it? You know, we know this. Yeah, I know you know it. But for many of you, you've let your standards slip, or your team's let your standards slip. And all of a sudden, these first impressions that you used to focus on have gone. And they need to come back. Because if we start to lose business because of the first impressions and the 6-second judgment call, then what the hell are you doing? Everything else beyond that, you've lost the job already. So let me just give you some tips of what I'm talking about here, right, with the judgment call. I'm talking about what you're posting on social media, because let's not be that naive. People are checking you out on social media. They're not just checking your website out. They're not just checking out your 5-star reviews on Google. They're digging and doing a bit of research on you on social media. So what you're posting on social media, are you effing and jeffing? Are you being political at the minute? Sexist, racist, all that lot? You know, if they go onto your private Facebook, which we can all get to see, by the way, if they go on your Facebook account, you know, how are you acting? How are you behaving? What photos, what videos have you got on there? Because all that lot is going to make a judgment call on you. What do you wear? How do you rock up and meet a potential customer? Because over the years, I've tried everything. I've gone in my work gear, like Snickers work trousers and a polo shirt covered in sawdust, plaster dust, decorator's coke, and I rock up. Do you want to rock up like that? Do you want to rock up with a pair of jeans and a clean embroidered shirt? Or do you want to rock up with a pair of trousers, black pair of shoes and a collared shirt? I've tried it all. What works best for you? We're talking about piercings, hairstyles, tattoos. All that lot will make a judgment call based on how you appear to people. And I'm not here to say that, I've got tattoos, but you'll never see them from a sales point of view. And recently on our inner circle, on our accountability session, and I'm not going to mention him, but we had one member, a plumbing and heating engineer, who's got sleeves, tattoos and sleeves that go all over his hands. And he said that recently an elderly couple pointed that out to him and told him that they found that quite intimidating. So I'm not here to judge people. I'm not saying tattoos are wrong. I've got them myself. But that will be turning some people off without a shadow of a doubt. We're talking about smoking and vaping, yellow fingers, smelly breath, pulling up outside customers' house with your window down, vaping outside window, personal hygiene. What vehicle do you pull up in? Let me give you an example of this. When I started doing really well in my business, I decided to treat myself for all my hard work, and I bought a brand new soft top E-Class Merc, right? And I went to survey a job, and it were early evening. I pulled up outside this person's house with top down, got out all smart, on time, went to the door, knocked on the door, he opened the door, and this is what he said to me. Is that your car you've just pulled up in? I went, yeah. And he slammed door in my face and basically told me to F off, because if I could afford a car like that, I must be ripping people off. So the car had turned this particular customer off. Now, if I'd have pulled up outside another person's house in that car, they could have gone, well, actually, they must be good at what they do. If they can afford a car like that, they must be really good at what they do. I want to use them. But I realised, hang on a minute, first impressions. So what I ended up doing is buying a little Berlingo van and rattling around in a Berlingo van doing my surveys. So what I'm saying is, all these things that you are doing and what you're wearing, how you look, people are going to make a judgment call on you. Now, I want you to take this word into consideration when it comes to sales, and that word is neutral. Neutral. You've got to remain as neutral as you can as a salesperson, because you've got absolutely no idea what that person's expectations or judgment calls are going to be about you when they first meet you. You've got no idea. So the more neutral we can stay, the more chance we've got appealing to all customers of all different demographics and ages, from a young couple buying the first home to an elderly retired couple and everybody in between. You've got to remain neutral. And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I've just bought another new car, literally last week. I've just bought a brand new Range Rover Sport Hybrid, right? And when I was looking for this car, we went round different Land Rover dealers. And I went into one Land Rover dealer and I noticed that one of these salesperson had got one red sock and one yellow sock. And I know why they're doing it. They're doing it to get noticed. But I'm here thinking, hang on a minute. I'm here to invest a lot of money into a lovely car. And this salesperson's trying to get me to notice them because they've got one sock is yet red and one sock's yellow. I'm like, screw that. So me and Sarah, my wife, we just walked out. She said, what are you doing? I'm like, he's got one red sock, one yellow sock. How gimmicky is that? I don't want that level of service. And you see people, don't you, like wearing Homer Simpson ties, thinking they're clever and it's going to get them noticed. No, it's turned me off. Another example. I hate being called fella. Please don't call me fella. I don't mind mate. I can tolerate that, but I don't want to be called fella. We went into another dealership and the salesperson come up to me and he went, "Good afternoon, fella. How old are you? How are you?" And I just looked at him and I just turned around and walked out. And he stood there looking at me. He's called me fella. I don't like being called fella. Remain neutral. Don't wear gimmicky stuff. Don't call me fella, mate, pal, buddy. You should never, ever, ever in sales, please don't tell me you're calling your customers or potential customers in person, in emails or text messages or WhatsApp, mate, bud, fella, pal, matey. Please don't put any of that in sales, because you're going to be turning people off. And the fact that he called me fella, he just lost out on a potential deal on a car because he called me fella. So you've got to remember, first impressions, whatever you say, however you're looking, whatever you're going to do, whatever you are presenting in front of your customers, they're making a judgment call on you. So you've got to smarten up. You've got to do your hair, wear a proper clean uniform, pull up in the right vehicle, not be smoking. For me, I'd be covering tattoos up. All that lot has got to remain neutral, because you could be losing the sale like the Range Rover dealership people have lost sales. You could be losing the sale because you've not remained neutral and you've done something to piss or turn that customer off. Tip number 2, write this down, asking cleverly planted questions. Cleverly planted questions. And what I mean by this is, Tony Robbins, who's an amazing NLP practitioner, by the way, and sales, Tony Robbins had a saying that I once read in one of his books called Awaken the Giant Within, right? And he says, the quality of your question will determine the quality of the potential customer's answer. And I never really got that until I got into sales, but it's true. The quality of the question that you ask your customer is going to give you back an answer. And if that answer doesn't give you the information to move them a step down that sales process and pipeline and a step or closer towards the sale, right? Why are you asking the question in the first place? It's pointless. Let me give you an example of a pointless question that people ask. For those of you that do follow up after you've sent a quote, and many of you won't, which is a mistake, but for them that do, some of you will be doing this. "Oh, Mrs. Jones, it's Craig Wilkinson from XYZ Company. I'm just giving you a quick call to see if you received our quote." Now, you know they've received the quote because you flipping sent it to them. So you know they got the quote. So why are you asking a stupid question that's going to give you a stupid answer? And they're going to either answer yes or no to that question. So if they answer no, you're going to go, "Oh, have you checked your inbox? Blah, blah, blah." And now you're completely off topic and you're moving away from the sale. Or if they say yes, "I've got it," what are you going to say next? They've just thrown that conversation back into your court, and then all of a sudden it's, "Yes, I've got it," and you go, You see what I'm saying? Why bother asking a stupid question to get a stupid answer? When we're asking cleverly planted questions, It's got to be a question that's going to give us information that we can move on one step closer. So instead of asking, did you receive our quote? I want you to ring up and say this: Mrs. Jones, it's Craig Wilkinson from XYZ Company. What did you think to our quote? And then shut up. Because now you're not going to get a yes or no answer back, are you? What did you think to our quote? So now you're opening the conversation up and they've got to tell you what they thought to your quote. So when I'm talking about cleverly planted questions, that is a prime example of what I'm asking. Remember, the quality of your question determines the quality of the answer. So what I want you to think about is this. What questions can you ask at all different stages of that sales process that's going to extract information out of that customer that you can then reuse back on that customer to get the right answers and tick some of them tick boxes, but to move them one step closer to choosing you to do the job? And whenever we ask a question, we always ask a question with an open-ended question. Write it down, an open-ended question. And what I mean by that is a question that starts off with one of these 6 words. Write these down. What, when, why, where, who, or how. What, when, why, where, who, or how. Because when you ask a question that starts with one of those words, nobody can give you a yes or no answer. They've got to give you an explanation or an answer. So if we're asking the right question, we get the right answer, we can then respond back to them, moving one step closer to you winning the job while building rapport along that way. So stop asking, did you receive our quote? Because that's going to give you a yes or no answer, and that's not going to move you any closer to you winning the job. But asking, what did you think to our quote? Now we're going to uncover what they really think to our quote. And then that's moving them one step closer to us winning the job. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, these cleverly planted questions you can use literally all over the show. And if you look at what I do and my inner circle members do, we use all this in our marketing and sales. So when you go onto one of my vetting forms, like let's say it's for inner circle, you cannot join my inner circle without you first going through one of my vetting forms. I practice what I preach. And in them vetting forms, I have cleverly planted questions that start off with what, when, where, why, who, or how. And when you give me the answer to that question, I then know that if I speak to you, because I interview and I speak to people before I let them on my inner circle and vet them, I've now got the information that I need to respectfully use back on you, right, on that, what is technically going to be a sales call. Listen, most people might be saying to me now, Craig, you shouldn't be telling everybody this because they're going to be right wary now. If they apply for inner circle, they know. I'm like, yeah, but listen, if I'm going to be your coach, if I'm going to help you grow your business, whether that's free on this podcast or whether that's joining Growth Club or being on inner circle, whatever, I need to be open, honest and transparent. I'm not going to give you off the strategy and keep off back, but that's what you need to do. So you need to be thinking about what questions you're asking on the vetting form. If a customer on social media asks you a question in the comments, how are you responding back? You need to respond back with an open-ended question. If somebody has had a quote and they email you back with a few questions, respond back to their question with a cleverly planted open-ended question. Do you get what I'm saying? When you go and see and speak to a customer, When you're at networking events, we can use this everywhere to extract information from you, from the people, the customers. So you've got to be using open-ended questions across your entire marketing and sales to extract that information, to tick those boxes and build know, like, trust and confidence, which ultimately builds relationships and rapport. Sales tip number 3. Write down the word body language. Body language. Now, there are 3 ways in which the human being communicates. The 3 ways are body language, the tonality of your voice, and the spoken word. There is no other way that human beings can communicate. It's got to be one of those 3 things. Now, just write these statistics down. The spoken word accumulates to 7% of communication. Just 7%. Tonality of voice accumulates to 38%. But body language is 55% of communication. Which means, if we know this, does it not make sense for us to mirror the body language of the customer that we're speaking to? And I know for a fact that when I teach this, the NLP side of this, about body language, this is something that puts a lot of people outside the comfort zone. And it did for me to start off with. Because if we're going to copy somebody else's body language, it feels a bit awkward and a bit strange. And it's like, it don't feel right, this. But I'm telling you now, if you want to build more rapport, you've got to mimic the other person's body language. And let me give you an example of this. Let's say you go on holiday and you go abroad. And while you're abroad, your child, let's say is 2 or 3 year old, they're playing around outside at pool with their armbands on. And then all of a sudden, another little kid comes up, similar age, but from a completely different country. So your kid isn't even speaking English yet. They're still learning their own native language. But when that other little kid comes up, who speaks a completely different language, when they come up, they can play and they can communicate with each other, and they know what they're doing and what they're saying because they're going to use body language to communicate. And I do, when I'm teaching this, I can have a full-blown conversation with someone, whether that's in a classroom environment or whether we're doing this training online. I have a full-blown conversation with someone just by me using body language and getting them to use their body language back to me. And we have this conversation and everybody else can see it. And then what I'll say is, right, what conversation have we just had? And then everyone will say, oh, you've just said this. And they responded that. And I'm like, exactly. Did we say a word? No, we didn't say a single word. We just used our body language to communicate. So what you need to start to do is get into the groove of thinking, right, I need to mimic the body language of my customer, but we're not going to mimic every single move and every single gesture that they do. I have a little rule. And that little rule is, if somebody moves into, let's say, a position and they're there for probably 20 seconds and it doesn't look like they're going to move out of that position, then what I will do, I'll do the exact same. So let me give you an example. I might have been invited to sit on a customer's sofa while we're chatting about the loft conversion, and Mr. Jones might put his left arm on the armchair and then cross his leg. And if he looks comfortable and he's been sat there for 20 seconds, then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my arm on on my sofa, on my arm, and I'm going to cross my leg and mimic exactly what he's doing. Now, if he moves out of that position, I'm not going to move out of my position the second he does it. I might get 15 seconds and then I'll move out of that position. If we're speaking with a customer and they stood there with their arms folded, many of us believe that if somebody's folded their arms and we're talking to them, that folding those arms is a sign of protection. You know, it's a barrier. They've put their arms in front of them and they're protecting themselves and they're not happy. But that's not always true, is it? Because think about it. When you're comfortable, whether you're chatting with your mates or your family, you'll sometimes cross your arms when you're talking. That don't mean to say that these are strangers and you're putting a barrier up. It just means to say that you're comfortable in that conversation. So if Mrs. Jones folds her arms and she's talking to me and she's been there for 20 seconds and it looks like she's not going to move, then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to fold my arms and I'm going to do the exact same, because what I'm wanting to do here is I'm wanting to build rapport. And psychologically, your customers don't clock this. They don't know that you're doing this because they're not aware of it. They're not aware of the power of body language. They're not trained in sales like you are. But what you're doing is you're mimicking that, which sends a signal to that potential customer of confidence and relaxed, because they're basically doing what you do. They're not acknowledging it and they don't physically tell themselves, oh, they've folded their arms like me, but it's just a confidence thing. And remember, the fourth trigger that we want to hit is an emotional trigger of what? Confidence. So we've got to start to mimic other people's body language. But likewise, let's not leave out tonality of voice, because that's 38% of communication. So I am quite animated. I'm a visual learner and I'm a visual communicator. So if you were to see me now, where I'm sat with my podcast mic in my studio, my arms are all over the show. I'm not sat here with my arms folded. I'm animating, right? I can talk quite fast. I'm quite passionate about what I do. So when I used to go in years ago and go blur, and my arms would be throwing all over, and I'd be painting pictures with my fingers to try and get my point across, and I'd be talking as quick as this, and I'd be all hyper and all excited, because that's how I am. That's how I'm built. But if that other customer, quite a softly spoken person, and they spoke a lot slower than me, and a lot quieter than me, and I'm going in and I'm talking like this, blah, 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 blah. Am I building rapport, or am I actually turning them off from a psychological point of view? I'm not building rapport, am I? Because I'm not at the same level as them. So the other thing that you've got to be mindful of is changing the tonality of your voice to suit the other person. So if they are talking a little bit softer and a little bit quieter, then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do exactly the same so that I can build more rapport. Or if you're speaking a bit louder and a bit quicker, then you need to pick your pace up and talk a bit louder and a little bit quicker. And what about the spoken word? It might only be 7% of communication, but the words that you're speaking, if you're going to build rapport, do you not think it makes sense to be mindful of the words that that particular person is using? Because they may use different types of words to what you would normally use in your vocabulary. Are you with me? Go back to what I said earlier about fella, right? One, you should never use that word in sales, but what I'm saying is, if a customer's constantly using a certain word like fella, even though I hate the word, right? If they would be using that in our conversation, guess what I'm going to put back into the conversation? The same words. So if somebody's using words that you don't normally say, whether that be in person, whether that be on an email or a text message, I'm always pulling out words that people are using, even though they might be alien to me and I'd never use them. And I would say the words back to them. On the text message, I'd write their words back to them. And same with emails. So again, I'm starting to build rapport. So when we start looking at communication in sales, 1, you've got to mimic the body language. 2, you've got to change your tonality to suit theirs. And 3, stop using fancy words that you would use and start using words that they use back to them. And all that lot builds more relationships and more rapport. Sales tip number 4. And this is what we call positioning. Positioning. Now, let me just explain what I mean by positioning. It's your job as the salesperson to do 2 things. Number 1, you grab hold of that potential customer's hand and you do not let it go in this sales process. You don't let go of their hand. And number 2, you must be explaining at each stage of this sales process what is happening next. So let me explain. Number 1, about holding the hands. You've got to make sure that your new potential customer feels like they're the only person that's important to you and the only customer that you've ever got. They're not bothered about you being busy. Please do not use the word busy in sales. Never say to a customer, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, is it okay if I get your quote back to you on Friday because I'm a bit busy?" They don't care that you're busy. They don't care that you've got other customers. All they care about is themselves and the problem that they've got that they're bringing you in for to solve. So you've got to make sure that they're the only customer that you've got and they have to feel like that. And what your job is to do is grab hold of the hand and get them from the stage that they're at now, which might be, let's say, a home survey. You grab hold of the hand at the home survey stage and you hold the hand to the next stage, which I'm guessing is going to be, they've got the quote. You've sent the quote, they've received it. You've got to hold the hand between that survey finishing and that quote being sent. And then when you get them to the quote being sent and they've received the quote, you've got to hold their hand from receiving the quote to the next stage, which I'm guessing should be a follow-up call. Now, a customer will only accept their hand being let go of 2 or 3 times in that sales journey and process before they lose confidence that you can solve the problem that they've got. Let me explain. If you say to a customer that you're going to be there at 6 p.m. to do a survey and you rock up at 6:05 and you're late, right? You've let go of their hands because you've told them you're going to be there at 6, but you rock up late. So straight away, at that point in that process, you've let go of their hands. Then you're going to knock on the door, tell them there's been an accident and traffic's been bad. They do not give a shit. You are late and you've already lost rapport and you're already breaking that relationship. At the end of that survey, you might say, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, I'll make sure you've got your quote by Thursday at 3 o'clock. Is that all right?" And they go, yeah, that's all right. But then Friday morning, they've still not received the quote. And therefore, Mrs. Jones is saying to Mr. Jones, quote's not come. Did he say 3 o'clock on Thursday? Yeah. All right, give him a ring then. Chase him up. I'm not ringing him. You ring him. I'm not ringing him. I tell you what, let's drop him a quick email. So if you're late with the quote and your customers are chasing you for the quote that you've promised them, you've let go of the hand. If a customer is trying to ring you, and for whatever reason, it might be a legitimate reason you've left your phone in van. It might be another reason where you see the customer's number come up and you go, oh, fuck, I ain't got time to deal with these yet. I'm on top of a roof pointing a chimney, right? And you don't answer the phone and the customer's not speaking to you. And bear in mind, customer service now says that if you don't answer your phone within 3 rings, it's poor customer service. So if they try and ring you twice and you don't answer your phone, you've let go of the hand. If they email you for whatever reason, but you're busy and you're spinning loads of plates, and their email sat in your inbox for 2 or 3 days, and then by the time you get round to emailing them back, you use that bullshit excuse that I know you've used. Oh, your email fell into our junk or spam folder and I've only just found it. Bullshit. It's been sat in your inbox for 3 days. But because you've been busy dealing with other customers that your potential customer doesn't care about, because you're busy, you've let go of the hand. Now think about it. You could be the best person in the world to do the job for them. You could have the best marketing on the planet. You could have the slickest automated sales process in Leadzilla or service, mate. But if you're going to keep letting go of the hand and you're going to be late with timescales, late with sending the quote, not answering your phone or responding back to emails, they're going to lose confidence in you can do the job. So when you send the quote in and then you follow it up and they say, oh, Craig, we're not going with you because we've got 3 other quotes and we've got a cheaper quote and we've gone with someone else. What they really want to say, but they don't say it because they don't want to hurt your feelings and they're not confident in saying it. What they really want to say is, Craig, your price were bang on, but you turned up late. You promised me my quote and it was 3 days later. You've not answered my phone twice and it took you 3 days to get back to me an email. That's why I'm not fucking going with you. So when I said at the beginning of this podcast episode, it's not always price on why people don't use you. It's not. It means you've dropped the ball on that sales process and you've let go of their hand and you've not positioned them correctly down that sales process. It's got nothing to do with price. You've just had a shit service to a customer that were expecting more. And you've broken your promises and you can't even be bothered to respond back to an email or pick your damn phone up. That's what they want to say, but they don't tell you that. The easy get out is, we've got a cheaper quote. And you go, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, you think you're too expensive. And you've got all these customers telling you, I've got a cheaper quote. And then therefore, you start questioning yourself thinking, I might have to drop my prices. It's not that. And if you do drop your prices, now you're scuppering yourself because you've got a shit sales process and now you've reduced your prices. Now, the second part to positioning is this. At every single one of those stages that I've just been talking about, whether it's a home survey, then it's the proposal, quote estimate goes out, then it's the follow-up call, whatever you're doing in that sales process, it's up to you to tell the customer what happens next. Because you know you've got a process that you're going to take them through. You know that you're going to put them through a vetting form. You know that you're going to trigger automated emails and text messages to them confirming your appointment with reminders. And you're going to have an introduction email in them emails and texts introducing yourself before you've even rocked up. You know you're going to turn up on time. You know you're going to be asking cleverly planted questions. You know that you're going to get a quote back to them. You know that you're going to follow that quote up. You know that you're going to deal with any objections and you know that you're going to close them at the end. But they don't. So if you're not explaining to them at each one of these stages what happens next, you're going to leave your potential customers second guessing. And when they start second guessing, it puts a seed of doubt into their minds. So if you don't tell them when they're going to expect the quote and what's going to happen after they've got the quote, they're going to be going, when do you think we're going to get that quote? And when quote comes in, what do we do about contacting them if we want to go ahead? Whereas what I'd be saying is, Mrs. Jones, you're going to receive your quote this afternoon at 3:00. Once you receive your quote, this is what will happen next. If you decide you want to proceed, what we'd do is we'd send you an invoice to pay a deposit. And once you've paid your deposit, we then book you in to our installation diary and we'll give you a date of your install. Is that okay with you? And they'll go, all right, yeah, that's great, Craig. So what I've done is I've positioned them and told them what's going to happen next. So they're not second guessing going, Fred, when will quote come? Fred, if we want to go ahead, what do we do? What I've done is I've told them they'll get the quote at 3:00. And then if they want to go ahead, this is the next step. This is what's happening. So they don't have to worry. They don't have to be concerned about what's happening. They don't have to second guess. They don't have to be a mind reader. I've just explained to them and told them what's going to happen next. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm on about positioning. You've got to make sure that you're holding the hands and explaining at each stage what's going to happen next. Sales tip number 5 is it's all in the follow-up. Write that down. It's all in the follow-up. And what I mean by this is you have to follow every single one of your quotes up with a phone call. And I know some of you are going to feel uncomfortable doing that. And some of you might think, oh, that's a bit pushy and a bit sleazy and a bit salesy, and I don't want to come across as desperate or I'm begging for work, because that's how I used to think years ago. I think I'll give them a quote. I've given them all the knowledge on the survey. And if they want to go ahead, it's up to them to come to me. I'm not going to chase them up. If they want me to do work, they can come to me. I'm not that desperate. And that was my attitude. But you have a right to follow that quote up, because let's face it, unless you're charging for quotes, which some of you will be doing, if you're giving free quotes out, basically you've just given them hours and hours, and for some of you it'll be days. If you're pricing big projects like extensions and new builds, it could be days of your time. You're giving hours or days of your time up for free, which when you put a monetary value to that, it could be literally hundreds or literally thousands of pounds for free. So you've got a right to ask for the business. You've got a right to do that. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So we have to make that follow-up call. And I know many of you have got automations built in, because we build these in for you when we build your Leadzilla and your Service Mate for you. We will build some automation in where you get an automated email and a text following that quote up. But we can't just rely on an automated email and text message being triggered. Because if they've got any outstanding questions, or they've got maybe a few objections that you need to deal with, you can't do that in a text message. You can't do that really in an email. Not properly. So I always say, make sure that you follow up every single quote, because you've already started that relationship process going. And as long as you've done your job properly and you've all your time scales and you've delivered everything as you said you were going to deliver, you've got that right to take a couple of minutes of that person's time just to answer a few questions. So, the best way of making these follow-up calls are as follows. Number 1, script it out. And what I mean by this is, look how I started off this podcast with one of the mistakes when people make follow-up calls. Oh, Mrs. Jones, it's Craig. Did you receive my quote? What's the point in that? So when I talk about scripting out, I'm on about scripting it out for the question that I prompted you to say, which is, what did you think to our quote? Because that opens up the conversation. So rather than you just ringing them up and winging it, think about it. Write down some cleverly planted questions that you can ask on the phone that's going to extract the right information from them to enable you to move them one step closer to you winning that job and getting that sale. So what questions do you need to ask? And then practice it. Be confident, because nobody likes to make follow-up calls. I don't think I've ever met anyone that says, oh, I love making them. I do now, because I just think, all I've got to do is get this conversation over the line and we've got another sale. But what I'm saying is, you've got to practice what you're going to say and not just wing it. If you can agree a set time to ring that person back, then that's even more valuable. And this don't have to be pushy, it don't have to be sleazy, but you could say something like this at the point where you're doing the survey. And this is what we used to do with my loft conversion business. So, Mrs. Jones, we're going to get your quote out to you tomorrow by 3 o'clock. And having done over 350 loft conversions, we know that usually our customers may have a question or two around the quote. And we want to make sure that we can answer those questions for you so you can make the best decision on what's right for you and who you're going to go with to increase your living space. So would you be opposed if I just gave you a quick call just to answer any questions that you might have got around your quote? Would you be okay with that? And they're going to go. It's not very often anyone at that point says no. Now, is that pushy and sleazy in the way in which I've just said it? Absolutely not. I'm doing it to benefit them. And then I'd say, oh, that's great, Mrs. Jones. So would it be okay if I gave you a ring on Wednesday at 4 p.m? Would that be okay for you? Or what is the best time for you? And then I'd agree the call. I'd say, right, here's what's going to happen next. I'd position them. You're going to get your quote tomorrow at this time. I'm going to give you a call at this day at this time to answer your questions. And I'll just drop you a quick text message as a reminder that I'm going to ring you. Would that be okay? And they're going to go, yeah. So the call's already booked in. And then we'd ring them. What do you think to our quote? And then the conversation flows from that point. Now, is any of that pushy and sleazy? Absolutely not. But at least then I know that I've got the follow-up call booked in and I can answer any questions that they might have got. Now, if you're just going to randomly call someone, you can do that. But here's what I found happens with when you randomly make a follow-up call. You generally do it when you've got the time to do it. This might be while you're on your lunch over a lunchtime, while you're sat in van having a sandwich and a cup of tea. You might then go, oh, I'll give Mrs. Jones a quick ring while I've got 5 minutes. So you'll ring at a time that's convenient for you. But you've got absolutely no idea if that's a convenient time for that potential customer. So, for example, they might be employed, right? And they can't have their phone switched on at work. So if you're ringing them during their working hours and they're not answering because they're not allowed to have the phone at the desk or whatever they're doing, then you ring them 3 or 4 times. They don't answer. You think you're being ghosted. And therefore it puts you off from ringing them again or puts you off from making follow-up calls full stop. It's not that. It's just that they were busy and they couldn't answer the phone. You might ring them at early evening. You've had your tea. You go, oh, just ring Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones might be at gymnastics with the daughter, or Mr. Jones might be at football training with his son, and you've rung just as they're dropping him off at football. And therefore, they're not going to answer. But you take that as a negative because they've not answered. So you've got to be bearing in mind that when you call someone, you've got no idea what they're up to, what's going off in their lives at that moment in time. You've got no idea, have you? So this is the reason why I'm saying if you can always agree a time to call, and that's in, you've got more chance of catching that customer and having that conversation with them. And also, make sure that whenever you make that follow-up call, it's done in a quiet environment. And what I mean by that is, if you're making a phone call from home, make sure dog's not barking, make sure kids aren't screaming, telly's blaring out, because it's so off-putting. Or if you're making it during the day, maybe you're in office and you're doing some quotes and your emails and your WhatsApp's pinging in background. It's very distracting. And I'm sure that if you've ever had a call from a call centre and you can hear another 300 people in background having calls with other people, it's quite off-putting, isn't it? So make sure that you're making it in a quiet environment where you've got the full divided attention of that potential customer. And the final thing that I would do is I would make sure that I'm not sat down when I'm making these follow-up calls. Because when you're sat down, you know, your body aura changes, you know, your back arches and you start slumping and it takes energy out of you. If you sat down in your desk, you might have got your tape measure on your desk, as I've got here. I've still got a tape. Listen to this, right? So I've still got a tape measure all them years, still got my tape on my desk. Or you might pick your pen up, yeah? Or you might have a drink of water, right? They can hear all that, so these distractions need to go. So when I ever do a follow-up call, I'm pacing, I'm up, I'm walking around in a quiet environment, I'm getting some energy into it. I'm telling the customer I would love to work with you on this project. Honestly, Mrs. Jones, your project is exactly the type of project that we'd love to work with you on. I want the business. I'm making them aware that we'd love to work with them. Are you with me? Now, final thing on follow-up calls, right, is for the reasons I've already explained, I would never make them. And I didn't want to come across as pushing sleazy at the same time. And if I'm being honest, nobody likes rejection, right? Nobody likes being said no to, right? So for all these reasons, I never used to make follow-up calls. But having done the Brian Tracy seminar, and he said, look, you've got to make these calls. This is the structure. This is what you need to do. So the following week, I thought, right, I can't remember what it was. It was 18 years ago, but let's say there were 5 jobs that I needed, that I'd quoted the previous week. I'd never made a follow-up call. And I thought, come on, Craig, you can do this. What's the worst thing that they're going to do? They can tell you to fuck off, or they might slam phone down on you or whatever, right? And I kid you not, the very first one I rang, oh, Mrs. Jones, it weren't Mrs. Jones, by the way. I just keep using that hypothetically. Just bear with me. Mrs. Jones, it's Craig Wilkinson here from XYZ Company. I'm just giving you a call. What did you think to our quote? And what came out of the customer's mouth next, I was shocked. You see, in my head, I'd convinced myself that I might get a barrage of abuse, or I might get phone slammed down on me, or I might be told, no, you ain't got it because you were too expensive, and I didn't want that rejection. But what came out of this customer's mouth next, I couldn't believe. And it went like this. Oh, Craig, I'm really glad you've called us. I'm sat there going, what? Yeah, I'm really glad you've called us. We were meant to get back to you, but we've just been busy. We want to go ahead. And I'm sat there like, oh, all right, okay. All right. And then they go, so what do we do next? And I'm go, all right, okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to send you out a deposit to pay an invoice and our terms and conditions and blah, blah, blah. And I put phone down. I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How easy was that? And then I made another call. Now, I can't remember whether I did 3 calls, 5 calls, 10 calls. I can't remember. But all I know, on one of those calls, I got this through as an example as well. Oh, Craig. Oh, thanks for your call. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. What did you think to our quote? Well, quote were great, Craig, and we actually wanted to go ahead with you, but we've actually given job to someone else. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, well, we favoured you. Your price were bang on. You were absolutely brilliant when you came out. Everything you've done were absolutely brilliant and we wanted to go with you. But you never contacted us back. So we didn't think you wanted a job. So we've given it to someone else. They contacted us, so we gave it to them. You quoted us a month ago and you've only just followed it up. I'm like, fuck. I'd missed out on a job because I'd not followed up. Can you hear what I'm saying? And yeah, every now and again, you're going to get someone be a bit like blank with you and a bit straight to the point. Oh, no, sorry, mate, we've gone with someone else. All right, crack on. Let them crack on. But I'm telling you now, you are leaving money and jobs on the table by you not following up. You've got to follow up. Sales tip number 6. Write this down. Closing and asking for the business. Now, in sales terms, I personally don't like the word closing because that makes it sound too sleazy in sales. You know, I just have this vision back in the day of sleazy salesmen going, let's go and close the deal and all this lot, right? I don't like it. I much prefer to call it asking for the business, right? But in sales spiel, it's called closing. And basically, you have got to ask for the business. You've got to put a clause in there where you close them and ask them for the business. Because let's face it, what's the point of doing everything you've done so far, from creating that social media content that's generated the lead, to going through your vetting form, to going and doing the survey, to sending them a quote, to following it up, if you're not going to put a clause in there? Because ultimately, this is what it comes down to. Now, if you've done the job right, you won't have to ask for the business, because just like in that example I've given you now about the follow-up call, Mrs. Jones said, oh, Craig, we've been meaning to call you. We want to go ahead. There's no need to close people, because what you've done in that sales process has ticked all the right boxes. Remember, right at the beginning of this episode, I said to you, you need to identify what them boxes are that needs ticking. And if we can tick all of those boxes along this sales journey, then we shouldn't have to close. They've closed themselves. They've already made their own mind up that they want to use you. And if that's the case, then brilliant. But for those people that don't come to you and say, we want to go ahead, you have to ask for the business. And again, you've heard in films and you've seen on telly and you've heard these sales documentaries where people have these right pushy sales, where they're like pushing people and almost forcing them and bullying them almost into parting with the money. We don't want to do any of that. There's no need to do any of that. think about it. If you've built up enough know, like, trust and confidence in your marketing, and you've done that and built rapport through this sales process up to now, there shouldn't be any reason, even for them that haven't come to you and said they want to go ahead, there's no need to use old school pushy sales tactics, is there? We don't do that, but we've got to ask for the business, and this can be on that follow-up call, or this can actually be there and then. For some of you, let's say, let me pick a trade that this would apply to. I'm going to choose a plasterer, right? And I'm going to choose a plasterer who's gone in to give a price to skim a ceiling, right, in a bedroom. Now, plasterers, don't have a go at me here. I'm not signalling you guys out to have a go at you or disrespect you. I'm not. All I'm saying is here, let's be honest. If you're going out to give a price for skimming a bedroom ceiling, right, it's a day's work, right? It might be, I don't know, 300-400 quid, whatever it's going to be. It's not a huge job compared to someone like me that did 100 grand loft conversions that took 9 weeks to build and 3,228 components in it using 9 different trades. That's the point I'm getting at. So, if you're a plasterer and you're there and then, and you've given someone a quote to do the ceiling because you can do that, because it's fairly simple to give them a price, you can ask for you can close them then. You can ask them for the business then. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. But me, as an example, going to a loft conversion where the customer has probably got to remortgage their house, which is going to take months, get loads of information, loads of quotes, get an architect involved and all that lot. I know that if I was to try and close them and say there and then, oh, Mrs. Jones, this loft conversion is going to be 98,750 quid plus VAT. Do you want to go ahead? They're going to go no. Because the sales process on selling a loft is months. The sales process and the time selling a skimmed ceiling can be there and then. That's the point I'm making. Now, how do you ask for the business? What do you actually say to close someone when you're on the phone and they're giving you all the right signals and they've not said they don't want to go ahead? You're at that point where you need to say to them, are you going to go ahead? But remember what I've said about what, when, why, where, who, or how. You've got to ask a closing question that starts off with one of those words. Because if you just said to Mrs. Jones, oh, Mrs. Jones, that's great. I'm glad you liked our quote. So do you want to go ahead? And they go, no. How has that moved them one step closer to that sale? You're not asking a cleverly planted question. You're asking a crap question that's going to get a crap answer. However, changing that to clauses such as, oh, Mrs. Jones, I'm glad you liked our quote. How would you like to proceed? And then just shut up. You've just closed them. Because now you're asking them how they would like to proceed. And if you've done your job right, at that point, Mrs. Jones will go, yeah, well, that's great, Craig. So what happens next? How do we proceed? What do we need to do? Bang, you've just closed them. Or another close. Oh, Mrs. Jones, great. I'm glad that you like our quote and we've explained everything to you. When would be an ideal start date for you? Again, I've just closed them. So what I'm saying here is none of these are pushy. None of these are sleazy, but you've got the opportunity here to ask for the business. But for many of you, one, you're not making the follow-up call, so you ain't got that opportunity. And two, you're not asking for the business. And by using a simple close, like 2 I've just shared with you, and on my inner circle, I share about 30 different closes. that are non-pushy, non-sleazy, non-salesy, but actually get the customer to commit, then that's what we need to be doing, because ultimately that is the whole process, is to get to that point where we get the job and we win the work. And unless you're going to ask for it, it's never going to happen. Sales tip number 7, dealing with objections. Write it down. Dealing with objections. Think about it. If you're making the follow-up calls, and if you're asking for the business and you've done your job right, then they'll go ahead. But if we've missed a few of them tick boxes off along that sales process, and they've still got certain things that aren't quite sitting right with them yet, and they're not ready to say, I want to go ahead, we need to find out what those questions, those unanswered questions are, because they are what we call objections. And what you've got to do is you've got to deal with these objections. It's called objection handling. Because when somebody says to you, and you'll get this all the time, I'm sure you will, you'll not be unique, you'll get objections such as, I need to have a think about it price-wise, or I've got cheaper quotes, or is there anything we can do on price? You'll get that all the time. You'll also get things such as, I need to speak to my husband or my wife or my partner, and I need to sit down and spend time with that. Or I haven't had time to go through the quote yet, right? So all these different objections you're going to get. But if you're just going to take on board at face value that they need to speak to the partner first, or price is an objection and they need to do something with it, you don't just let them wriggle away. Basically what they're saying is, I've still got unanswered questions. So it's your job as a salesperson to uncover, what is it? What's the sticking point? What is it that I've missed? What information do I need to give you to enable you to make that decision? And if it's a no, it's a no. But remember, you're leaving work and jobs and money on the table by not dealing with these objections. You see, if anybody were to say to me, oh, Craig, your coaching program's too expensive, I can get it cheaper somewhere else, I'd know exactly what to say back to that person. Not to try and convince them to use me. I don't have to do that. But I know what I'd do to go back to them. If they said to me, oh, I need to speak to my business partner, you know, working with you, it's not just my decision. I've got to speak to my business partner as well. I know exactly what I'd say back to him to make sure that I could uncover those questions that I haven't already answered in that sales process. And then once I've dealt with that objection, I then ask for the business again by giving them another close. Not the same one, I go for another close. So when somebody is objecting to you or your price, what do? Do you just let them wriggle off and wriggle away and say, oh, okay, thanks for wasting hours or days of my time, but I'm going to let you wriggle away, all because I'm not prepared to ask the right questions, find out what the problem is or the issue is and resolve it for you? Are you going to fall at the final hurdle, or are you going to learn some objection handling on how you can deal with these objections that doesn't sound pushy, doesn't sound sleazy, but uncovers what's really going on behind the scenes? What is the real sticking point? Because if you can understand what that real sticking point is and why they're not choosing you at this stage, if you can find out what that information is, and you can resolve it there and then for them to go, right, I get it now. And then you go for the close again. Once you've dealt with all them objections, there should be none left. So therefore, you ask for the business again. Now, I could give you 30, 40, 50 different ways to deal with objections of everything from price, or I need to speak to my husband, wife, business partner. I've got them all covered. But let me just give you a couple as examples. I'm not saying these are the ones that you've got to use. I'm just trying to give you examples of how we can uncover the real reasons why they've decided at this stage, because they've not said no, remember? They haven't said no. Basically what they're saying is, I've still got things that I need to get the answers to before I can say yes. So let me give you some clever objection handling that uncovers what those questions would be that we need to answer so we can answer them and move on. Number one, let's deal with a couple, let's say from price. So if anybody uses the price objection, whether, you're too expensive or, we've got 3 quotes in and we're still not made his mind up yet and we think we're going to go with this other company because they're a bit cheaper, because that's what we get. Here are 2 very simple objection handling questions you can throw back at them that will uncover that information. All right? So I'd be saying this. What information are you basing that on? And just shut up. Because if they're saying, I've got 3 quotes and other 2 are cheaper than you, and therefore we're going to go ahead with them, I'd be saying, well, what information are you basing that on? Now, by just simply saying that, they've got to come back to you. And sometimes they'll go, well, I don't really know. So now they're already putting seeds of doubt in their own mind because they don't know. Or they might come back and say, well, I've got your quote at the side of theirs and, theirs is cheaper based on this. And you can go down the route of, oh, okay, so now we know that they're looking at a side-by-side quotes and they're trying to look at each one and go, well, hang on, that's included in that one, that's one thing. But they might have included for a different manufacturer boiler, as an example. They might have offered a lower level of guarantee, so the price is bound to be cheaper. So it's not apples for apples, is it, this? And that way we can start to uncover that and go down that route and make them see that actually you're not looking at this apples and apples. Ah, right. Do you get what I mean? Or if someone's saying that they've got a cheaper price, we could also go with this one. So, Mrs. Jones, what's most important to you? A cheap price or a quality install where you've got peace of mind knowing that the installation's been done correctly by highly skilled fitters or engineers, where you get a 5-year guarantee? What's the most important to you? I don't think I've ever had anyone say, cheap price. They've all gone, all right, well. So now we're opening them up, aren't we? Do you get what I mean? We're now uncovering what's the real issue is. Or let's say, I don't know, they've not made their mind up yet, or they need to speak to the partner, husband, wife, business partner. I've not made my mind up yet. I just need to think about it. I just need a bit more time to think about it. Then what I would come back with is this. What is it that you need to think about? Because if you let me know what that is, I'll gladly put an email together for you and send you that out with that information on. Would that be okay? Now, what's just happened here is this. You've just given them a little get out, haven't you? Because they're thinking, well, hang on a minute, I can get off this call. They can email me what I want. And therefore, I prefer to do that. But in reality, what have you actually just done? You've just asked them, what do they need to think about? And they're going to tell you what they're thinking about so you can respond and put that into an email. But when they tell you what it is they're thinking about, we don't put it in an email. We deal with it there and then. So if they say to you, well, I just need to think about your payment terms. Right. You know that that's one of the objections. So what you're going to do, you're going to deal with that straight away. Then you're going to say, well, what else is it that you need to think about? And they're going to go, well, it's these guarantees, I need this level of guarantee. Right, deal with it there and then. And then go for the close, because what you were going to put in an email, you've just uncovered and you've just dealt with. Do you get what I mean? Now, none of this is pushing sleazy. Yes, I accept that asking for the business, making follow-up calls, dealing with objections might take you outside your comfort zone, because it did with me. But when you realise nobody's going to shout and scream at you, nobody's going to go effing and jeffing at your damn phone, and nobody's going to slam the phone down at you, all you're literally doing is asking a series of questions and taking a different approach. I am telling you now, you will win more business. And if you choose to ignore any of these 7 steps and just keep doing what you're doing now, that's great, but you'll never grow your business, because you're going to run out of the most valuable currency that we've all got, which is time. You see, what you don't want to be doing is looking at more and more and more jobs, pricing more and more and more jobs to grow your business, because you've only got 168 hours in a week. What you need to do is take these jobs that you've got now. Most people don't need any more leads coming in. You just need to convert more of the leads that have come in. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's imperative that you put these 7 steps in to place. Now, when I first learnt about all this 18 years ago, I'm like, flipping heck, there's a lot to do here. And there is, we've covered so much on this podcast. I give you value, and I've given it you. But what I want you to do is I just want you to choose 2 or 3 of these different areas that you're not currently doing and implement them into your business. And listen, if it takes you 3 months, it takes you 3 months. We're not saying you've got to do it overnight. What we're saying is, by implementing literally just 2 or 3 of these steps into your sales process, I'm telling you now, it's going to make a massive amount of difference to your conversion rate and the amount of jobs that you're going to win. And not only is this going to save you money on marketing, because you're not going to have to spend any more time and money on marketing, you just need to convert more of the leads that are coming in. But you're going to win more work, and ultimately, if you've got your numbers right, you're going to make more profit, and you're not having to do anything else other than implement these 7 steps. So what I'd love you to do is I'd love you to come into either our free Trades Freedom Club Facebook group and community, or if you're a Growth Club member, you know where to go, come into our school community. Tell me that you've listened to episode 77, and out of these 7 tips, which are the ones that you're going to start on first? I'm interested to know. And if you need any more help and support, then we'll give it you inside those communities. So come and tell us exactly what it is you've learned and what you're going to implement first. Now, the links to the Facebook group and the Growth Club are in the show notes and the description of this episode. And could I please ask you, whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, could be Spotify, could be our website, could be YouTube, could be Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, could I please ask you to follow or subscribe? Because every time somebody does that, it's going to help push our episodes out to more people. And the more people we can get this out to, the more people we can help and support in their trades or construction business. Finally, quick reminder, the link to secure your tickets to our up-and-coming Rising of the Trade Summit is also in the show notes of this episode. And remember this, for things to change, you have to change, or all you'll ever have in your pocket is change. I'll catch up with you on next week's episode, and I'll meet you at the top. Thank you.